Welcome to Building Healthy Relationships, the 4 Habits podcast, helping you enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life. Here are your hosts, Dr Andrea and Jon Taylor-Cummings, recognised authorities on the subjects of improving work relationships and cultures, as well as couple and home relationships.
Well, hello and a warm welcome to our guests around the world. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Great to have you join us for another very engaged and inspiring conversation. Today we have none other than Geoff McDonald. I'm going to call him the guru in mental health and well-being space. Welcome, Geoff. Really good to have you.
Jonathan and Andrea, lovely to be part of this conversation. And no, I'm not the guru. You can't say I'm the guru.
Well,
We think so. And I'm going to tell our audience why you are, because we always like to give our guests a proper introduction.
yeah,
So let me just give our audience the lowdown.
quick inside. Yeah.
Yeah. So Geoff McDonald is the former global vice president of HR, marketing, communications, and sustainability at Unilever, but he is now a global advocate, campaigner, and consultant focused on combating the stigma of mental ill health in the workplace and elevating well-being to a strategic priority in the C-suite. And there are not many people doing that.
Yeah.
Geoff's a sought-after keynote speaker, and as that, his focus is on energizing and motivating organizations to put well-being at the absolute center of everything they do, inspiring action towards creating workplaces that enhance the lives of all employees. His extensive campaigning work includes participation in BBC programs, writing for esteemed publications like Huffington Post, the Financial Times, and he's also convened high-level meetings with key stakeholders, including a session at number 10 Downing Street with the UK Prime Minister David Cameron back in the day, and CEOs from FTSE 100 companies. With over 11 years of global experience across all sectors, Geoff also serves as a trustee of several charities. I think it's countless charities, according to my recollection, but he includes the Burn Chef Project and the Baton of Hope, and he acts as a strategic advisor to numerous companies seeking to elevate well-being as a strategic imperative. So you can see why we call him a guru in the space.
Exactly.
Certainly everything mental health. Geoff has a couple of TEDx talks, I believe, out there as well. So absolutely knows what he's talking about in this space. And it's a real privilege and delight to have him with us today.
So, Geoff, really keen to just fill in some of the blanks on that background and share a bit of the backstory on the passion, what's driving your passion and what your focus is now.
Yeah, Andrea, and thank you for that, Jonathan, for those very kind words. I think it was, I don't know, somebody once said, having a sense of purpose and meaning in your life will take you to people and to places you could never imagine.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, that sounds a little bit cliched, but being very, very clear on this sense of purpose, which I suppose came about as a result of my own crucible moment in life.
Right.
Back in 2008, when I was very, very ill with anxiety-fueled depression, doing a very big job in Unilever, and I get very, very ill. But yes, over a period of 3 months, I had to take 3 months off work. But I suppose it took me a good 8 to 10 months to fully recover and be, back to my kind of normal best. Although it's funny, I don't like that word recover. I mean, I work very, very hard every single day to maintain my recovery because I think I'm somebody who is susceptible to anxiety-fueled depression. So I need to work hard to maintain my physical health, to maintain my emotional health, to maintain my mental health, and yes, having this sense of purpose and meaning in my life. So I go back into Unilever, and then about 4 years after that crucible moment, I lose a very good friend to suicide. And,
wow.
There's a lovely saying, I think it was Carl Jung, the brighter the light, the darker the shadow. And he was just all of that. He brought so much passion, he brought so much joy to people's lives, and he died by suicide. That afternoon, 4 years, it was November or October of 2012. And I think I lay in bed that night and I thought to myself, what was the difference between him and me? And I came to a very simple conclusion. And the conclusion I came to is I'd been able to talk. I'd been able to experience a sense of love, a sense of hope, because people knew about my illness, and that's what I got from them.
Yeah.
I got
Mhm.
an outpouring of love, I got an outpouring of hope, and that kept me going in many ways. And he couldn't. He was an alpha male. He couldn't talk about his struggles, and instead he took his own life. And I thought that that was unfair. It was an injustice in the world, and I wanted to do something about it. So I co-led a piece of work in Unilever about breaking stigma, because I really thought that stigma had just killed my friend.
Absolutely.
And and yeah, I mean, after seeing the success of some of that work in Unilever, I then decided to leave Unilever sort of middle of 2014. And as Jonathan said, I've spent the last almost 10 years now campaigning, being an activist, helping organizations both address the stigma of mental ill health, but also think about the whole concept of well-being and energy in a more strategic way as a driver of business performance.
And I'm sure that voice has amplified even more post COVID. You know, I'd love to talk about the trends that you've noticed. That well, go on.
Yeah, you know, Andrea, in many ways, I mean, I think that COVID kind of accelerated the
Mm.
conversation around employee well-being. I think I don't think it really accelerated it. I think it democratized mental ill health. I think
Mhm.
people who never thought that they would feel sad or depressed or very anxious suddenly were feeling that way.
Yeah.
And so I think there was a real acceleration. I think companies got really serious about, with people in lockdown and working from home, how were they going to maintain their well-being?
Yeah.
And I think, it's kind of continued, but the trend I see right now is one of, and by the way, and companies have invested in resources beyond just people's physical health.
Mm-hmm.
They've provided as part of their rewards
Sure.
and benefits package some resources to enhance people's emotional health, their mental health. But I think what companies have done over the last couple of years since COVID, and maybe it's only a year or so, isn't it? Is I get a sense that there's a lot of well-being being done to employees.
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm going to do well-being to you.
Yeah.
And what do I mean by that? I'm going to give you a resource and an app. Now go and sort out your well-being.
Okay,
Yeah.
got you.
You got and where I think we need to be going now is we need to be thinking about doing well-being to the organization. So how do we begin to really shift the culture of the organization such that it enhances the lives of people physically, emotionally, mentally, and people have a sense of purpose and meaning at work? So,
Yeah.
and I often say, don't tell me to go and use a particular app that's going to help with my mental health. If I've got a boss who's bullying me, if
Absolutely.
I've
The
got
problem
leaders who
doesn't
are,
go away.
say that again, Andrea.
The problem doesn't go away. The cause of the problem isn't going away.
Exactly. Don't tell me to go and use some app if I've got a boss who is on my back 24/7, or I feel that I've got no control over my work, or I haven't got the opportunity to connect and build relationships with people at work. I mean, so I think that there's a time now. I think for me, the next phase in the well-being journey has got to be us focusing more on the organizational responsibility,
Yeah.
apart from providing some resources, and really begin to look at the culture of the organization through this lens of well-being and enhancing the lives of people who are coming to work.
Now you're
Absolutely.
absolutely talking our language, because it's always the behaviors that are modeled that give people the cue on what's acceptable and what's not acceptable. And what we're finding is the mindset of leadership in many cases seem to be stuck in the industrial age and not caught up with the digital age, where we work more flexibly, we work 24/7, we're working harder, faster, longer. How do we breathe life and health in a new way into the culture? So what are you seeing in terms of the shifts that leaders need to make to create more well-being in the workplace?
Well, I think the first thing that I would say around, about leaders and a greater emphasis on moving the dial towards culture change. I mean, I think the first thing is, I think leaders, they've got to care for their own well-being.
For sure, yeah.
I see so many leaders out there, Andrea and Jonathan, who don't care for their own well-being. And I honestly believe that if we can't care for our own well-being, we'll find it hard to care for other people's well-being.
For sure. Yeah.
If I think that I can survive on 2 hours sleep a night or 4 hours sleep a night, or I'm using, I don't know, alcohol or some other drug to keep me going, I mean, that isn't role modeling. That isn't taking care of your own well-being, and therefore you don't really care for anybody else's. They need to go and find their ways to so for me, that's the first thing.
Yeah.
I like what you started off the conversation by saying, Geoff, we were talking about recovery and the challenge for ongoing recovery, I think is how you put it. And we had we were chatting just before we came on air, before we went live, and you were sharing how you were investing in your own well-being in terms of you were doing 100 miles a day on your bike recently. From what I'm hearing you saying is that's the kind of, not necessarily to that limit or to that extent perhaps, but you're investing in your own well-being right there in your physical health.
Let me come back to that, Jonathan, because I want to just share with you a lovely little acronym that I use every single day to look after my well-being, and I spend 60 or 90 minutes. But I just want to come back to Andrea's challenge around what are we seeing around leaders. So and then I think the other thing, Andrea, is not having well-being as a strategic imperative. There are not enough leaders in the C-suite that are seeing, and I don't know why, because it's so obvious, the link between healthy, engaged, energetic, happy people and performance.
Absolutely.
And it's almost like, well, we'll do some well-being and then let's now start focus on performance.
Get on with the real job.
Exactly. And it's not the either or, it's an and. And why wouldn't it be a strategic imperative, the well-being of every single person? And you know what? I don't use the word well-being that much because I think it has lost its significance, and it's that kind of fluffy, soft stuff called well-being.
Or
and
yoga.
So I prefer
do yoga.
Yoga and mindfulness, and you're good.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And I prefer the word energy. But we can't be energized if we're not healthy in a holistic sense, physically, mentally, emotionally, have that sense of purpose and meaning in our life.
Yeah.
So if the energy of our people is the most critical enabler of performance at an individual, at a team level, at least, I might have to stretch to the organization level, but if it's the most critical enabler of individual and team performance, why is it not a strategic imperative? And why are we not investing behind it like we would any other strategic imperative? And Jonathan, you'll know this. Your background in banking and a senior role, you get those strategic imperatives. They are about driving the performance of an organization, and you invest in those priorities.
Absolutely.
And you measure the success, and you have milestones, and you review progress as a board and executive team. I mean, when it comes to well-being, we have a week called the Well-being Week. And I flog you to death, and then I flog you to death for the next 51 weeks of the year. But guess what? We've done our well-being bit.
Yeah.
But what's interesting, and I'm sure you're seeing this, Geoff, is that the more automated we become, the more global we become, the more significant the increase in stress and anxiety levels. And it's as if we're not doing the maths to show that going better, stronger, faster is putting so much pressure on the very people we're depending on to perform well. More than ever, we need to be investing in people's well-being to deliver results.
And I think that because we've got, all this digital stuff and we're working from home and all of that, we are losing our ability to truly connect with one another.
Yeah.
And connection for me, and I know you guys are more expert than I am in this whole space of emotional health, but I can tell you, we are becoming so disconnected from one another and not having these opportunities to really connect and disconnect from, the device and the laptop and the Apple, and go and have those conversations that build relationships. I mean, powerful, positive, constructive relationships are so good for our emotional health and therefore our overall sense of energy and passion in what we want to do. So, and I just think it saddens me to see how, we've become so digital, and there's a place for all of that, and so working from home, that we've sacrificed the most critical enabler of, I think, the performance piece around energy, and that's about connection and relationships and getting things done through those relationships, and therefore our emotional health.
Yeah.
I think that the dots are going to have to start being connected in a real way, because I was reading something recently by McKinsey, and they spoke about as AI comes in and takes over the more routine work, stuff that can be easily automated, the thing that will add value and make the real difference is the human ability to innovate, to collaborate, to just problem solve in a way that computers can't. But they will need more downtime, more reflection time, more well-being to be able to perform at that cognitive level. So the dots, it have to be connected to get the performance that everybody's after at the end of the day. You were going to say something, John?
No. Oh, sorry, Jonathan, go.
No, you go for it. I'm going a different angle from there.
Go, Geoff.
No, but I it's such a paradox, isn't it? So
Yeah.
all this artificial intelligence, all this digital, at the end of the day, the real differentiator will be if you are more human.
Yeah,
as an organization. If you are more human, if we do become more human, and we go back to those real basic human instincts, and so there's a paradox in it all. AI becoming more human is going to be the challenge, and it's those are going to be those organizations that really focus on being more human, caring for the well-being of their people, are the ones that will succeed, because everybody will be able to replicate the AI.
Yeah.
Well, that brings us back to what John was going to talk about around how do you actually take care of yourself, because the struggle will be for leaders to change the mindset from the kind of command and control to a much more engaged, collaborative, human-centered approach to leadership, which starts with how are they taking care of themselves and modeling it. And that's the question you were asking.
Well, the question
Geoff.
I was going beyond that question actually is, once they start modeling themselves, where have you seen success in leaders at the C-suite actually taking responsibility for themselves, for their own well-being, and then successfully managing to roll that out across the organization and get good results?
Yeah.
Have you seen any good examples of people getting it right? Or are we still struggling out there?
I think we're still struggling, Jonathan.
Wow.
I mean, I think that we've seen good examples. If we go back to just the kind of Warwick, Edinburgh definition of well-being, I just want to use that as part of our conversation, which essentially defines our well-being as our physical health, our emotional health, our mental health, and our spiritual health. Now, there are organizations out there, and there have been for years and years and years, and you'll know this, John, where we invested a lot in enhancing people's physical health. So,
gym memberships.
Yep, exactly.
Yeah. And in some big corporates, gyms in their office buildings.
In the office,
so
yeah,
not
we
just
had that.
memberships, a full-on fledging gym. Hey? You had that?
Yeah, we had that in our banking days. Yeah. Full gym downstairs.
Absolutely. And so then the sort of whole conversation around mental and emotional health began, and we've got organizations, I think, focusing more on the mental health piece rather than the emotional health piece.
Mm-hmm.
All
Agreed.
around, they're all around training around mental health, the stigma that is associated, breaking the stigma, opening up the conversation. I think that's really where a lot of the focus has been. And
Mm-hmm.
there are some organizations who've done some really good work in that space. Some
sure.
of professional services, some law firms, some consumer goods businesses have really worked hard in that area. But Jonathan, I still haven't seen. I mean, I could probably count on one hand those organizations that have taken a strategic approach to enhancing the well-being of the people. So we are still struggling. There are very, very few that have taken a truly strategic approach where they're prepared to go and measure the well-being of their organization, get that data, develop a strategy around that data so that it's data-led rather than a kind of vanilla approach to the well-being of their people and offering everybody just some resources and saying, get on with it. So I think we are still struggling, Jonathan,
Wow.
and I can't mention many organizations. You might see it in the HR function that well-being is kind of seen to be of strategic importance, but it's not good enough for me. It needs to be in the boardroom. It needs to be in the C-suite.
What do you think it will take for that to happen? What do you think needs to happen? We don't need more lives lost. We don't need more suffering. What needs to happen for them to get that message?
I ask myself that question almost every single day of my life. Because I can tell you, Jonathan, the business case to enhance in the well-being of your people is so well proven.
Yeah.
And intuitively we all know that. Okay? So what's preventing it being a strategic imperative? And I think there are a couple of things that I think is at play here. I think the first is what I started with, which is kind of leaders and their own well-being and thinking that they are machines and they don't need to look after their health and they can just get on with their lives. And do you know what I mean? And not know who their daughter is or their son is, and just work 24/7. And so I think that's one issue. I think the second issue is I think there's a real fear out there. So some of the stuff that I'm asking organizations to do is do a survey on the well-being of your people, like we used to do with engagement surveys. We still do. We do engagement surveys. Now, it's not good enough to have a couple of questions in an engagement survey around well-being because it's not statistically valid. But there's a fear for organizations to do a organizational-wide well-being survey because the data that they will get is not going to look good.
Yeah.
Right.
I'd love
It's
to
not.
know what's the percentage of heart attacks in the C-suite
Exactly.
or something like that.
Exactly, Andrea. It's not going to look good. It's going to be red and orange about the well-being of people. And what I say to CEOs is, but you're all the same, so don't worry about that. You're all in the same boat.
Yeah.
There are very few organizations that I go into where people's lives are being truly enhanced, by going to work. There's huge amount, you were saying it earlier, Andrea, anxiety and stress in the workplace today. People's lives are diminished. So, but there's a real fear. CEO or the chief, they don't want to see that red and orange and the risks. And then I think the third is, Jonathan, is a capability issue.
Okay.
There's no in-house capability on the strategic imperative. Where are the capabilities? How do I do this stuff? What is this stuff called well-being? Are there good enough external providers out there? The equivalent of a McKinsey or a Capgemini or a BCG on the whole well-being space.
Yeah.
So I think there's a real capability gap still. And so if I'm fearful of getting this information, I want to do something about it, but I don't know what to do. I can't turn to my chief HR officer. I mean, I spent 25 years in HR. Nobody ever taught me anything about well-being and,
Yeah.
the stuff around well-being.
Mm.
Now, there's some organizations that are starting to appoint chief well-being officers. And I think, so I think there's a capability issue. And then finally, I think that there are often these kind of cultural barriers that just make any well-being strategy die in a ditch, because when culture and strategy collide, culture wins
Culture
every time,
wins.
Yeah.
Yeah,
doesn't it?
Yeah.
absolutely.
Doesn't it?
But
And so
that's
we
why
don't.
what you're doing is so important, because it's challenging the mindset to lift the level at which well-being is perceived as important. And up until now, it's, go to the gym, watch your
Yeah,
diet, go off and do some yoga and meditation. One of the things we talk about, as you know, is that stress and anxiety, a major cause of that is relational tension, which will come from leadership behaviors, from the culture, from the level of psychological safety. And unless you can raise the conversation to the level where you're looking at the whole organization, well-being will only ever be a little band-aid
exactly.
as people leave the organization. But that's not going to work for the next generation. What are you seeing in terms of the disconnect in expectation of, or, the old assumption is blood, sweat, and tears, sacrifice everything for 40
Exactly.
years and get a gold watch. That doesn't wash with the next
Sure
generation,
doesn't.
which is
Sure
a
doesn't.
wake-up
Uh,
call. Well, are you noticing a difference in their expectations around well-being?
and working.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I mean, the really talented individuals are asking two big questions. What are you doing to enhance the well-being of people in this company before I join you?
Mm.
And what's its purpose? What's its purpose
Wow.
beyond growth and profitability?
Yeah.
What's its contribution to making the world a better place? So what's your organization's contribution to making the world a better place? And what are you doing around the well-being of your people? I mean, these are big questions that talented individuals are asking. And, if I just talk from my own experience, my two daughters who are 26 and 29, I mean, they're not into these big corporate 40-year careers. They want something that is more flexible. They want something that is more portfolio-like. They want something that is more dynamic. They want something that is, where there's a culture of where there are good relationships and positive working habits. Small is big for them right now. I don't know. I mean, I've been trying to get them to go and join one of the bigger No, Dad, I'm not interested in going and joining one of those big corporates. And I think a lot of them, and again, I talk from 25 years working for Unilever. There was a time when I was a very absent father,
Mm.
and I don't think youngsters want that anymore. They don't want to be that sort of father and mother. It's not.
Yeah.
I think there's a lovely saying, and I always get it wrong, but do we live to work, or do we work to live?
Yeah.
And I think youngsters these days are saying, look, I'm going to work to live.
Yes.
I'm not going to live to work.
Yes,
This whole
absolutely.
concept of work-life balance has a whole different meaning to them. It is, as
Yeah.
you rightly say,
Yeah.
it's I'm going to work to live, but then once I've got enough to live, I'm done working.
Yeah. And also, Jonathan, and also, look, I think there's still you still got the Goldman Sachs and all the rest pulling in lots of graduates who are joining early on, but I don't think they sustain their careers anymore in those organizations. So maybe they'll put in the hard yards for 2 or 3 years, and then they're going to say enough is enough. I'm looking for a place where I can sustain my overall health and well-being. I can't
Yes.
do this 24/7, and I mean, from your own background, I think those days are over.
They're over for the younger generation, but also for people who lived through COVID, realize that it's the connection, it's the relationships, it's the people, and the purpose, the bigger purpose in life that makes this all meaningful. So I'm not going to work the way I used to work. So the mindset and the expectations of work, they've all shifted, but I don't think the approach to leadership or the expectations of leadership and culture, I don't think those have caught up yet.
No.
And there is this, the personal professional divide mindset still plagues the way we approach life, and compromises even our ability to create and innovate around a new style of working, because we're still seeing people as separate.
Yeah.
You know, the personal versus the professional. It's not like that anymore. Definitely not like that for the next generation.
Definitely.
So we need new models, new mental models of what work is.
I like how you summarize what the challenges. I've got them down here as, you know, the lack of personal buy-in for the leaders. Fear, I think fear is a big one. Where they're not recording it because they don't want to see what the results are going to come out at.
Because they know what the results.
They know what the results are. I mean, we had that. We had the conversation. We were talking to a former partner at one of the big consulting firms, and he was saying, guys, we know that the divorce rate amongst the partnership is 60-70%. We know that. But we're not recording. We're not going to share that because, you know, what we're going to do to our business.
And we're not going to talk about it.
We're not going to talk about it. And we're saying, actually, no, it's the responsible thing to do is recognize these things.
Yeah.
Don't hide it, but then equip people. You're then saying the capability's got to be there. The culture's got to be there. Give people the tools to be able to handle it and have a better chance of getting through it. Because they're on that journey. Everybody wants that journey. They want they're motivated, driven people. They want all the good stuff. But show them the risks and actually equip them and give them the skills to be able to go on that journey successfully.
To manage it.
So as we leave, what parting thoughts? What would you say to organizations in terms of advice to them? What would you say, guys? This is what you've given us those 4 things there. But is there one thing that you would say to these leaders out there? Yeah, if you want to improve the energy in your organization, let's move on from the word well-being. Perhaps if they think, you know, time for a change to improve the energy, this is what you got to be doing.
Yeah, I mean, I sound like a bit of a stuck record on this, but you've what do you got to do? You've got to elevate the well-being, the energy, the health of your people to being a strategic imperative, and treat it like any other strategic imperative. And if you haven't got the capability, then go outside and get some of those capabilities in to support you with the execution of that strategic imperative. Yeah. Like any other strategic imperative, you know, we haven't always got the capability. I mean, I remember when Unilever, one of our imperatives when I was with the Africa was to really build Africa. And yes, we had to go out and we had to partner with others to help build our base and build Africa. And I think the same applies to well-being now. You know, make it a strategic imperative.
Yeah.
And enhance the life of every individual who works in and what a differentiator. What a differentiator. Imagine an employee value proposition which says, come and work for me. You know why? Because we'll enhance your life. We'll enhance it. We'll make it better. Rather than most workplaces I go into, people's lives are diminished by going to work. They are diminished. Yeah.
So if you were to do the first 3 things or the top 3 things of you know, specific action that a C-suite, a CEO, you know, if HR is on the executive board, because that's always an indicator of how strategically they see people, whether, you know, HR is on the exec board. If you had to choose, you know, the 3 things to do to go in and start improving the well-being at a strategic level, what would you do?
You know the 3 things I would do? Number 1, I would make it very overt that energy, health, and well-being is a critical enabler of performance. So it would be part of my performance management system. I would build well-being into the performance management system. Because currently, it's about knowledge, skills, behavior, and experience that drive performance. I would be saying, no, we are also going to include the concept of well-being as a driver of performance. So it would be part of the performance management system. The second thing I would be doing is I would be then ensuring that all the way through the organization, that part of the development conversation that you have with your people would not just be about their skills, their knowledge, and their behaviors. It would be about their well-being as a development conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What are you doing to protect and enhance your well-being as part of your development in this company? The third thing that I would be doing is I would be getting some data. I would do a well-being survey, and I would get that data, and I would look at that data and then use that data to drive the overall well-being strategy for the organization. And as a leader, or as a CEO, I would hold my colleagues accountable for their well-being and the energy that they are bringing to the organization. I would really hold them accountable for that.
Yeah.
I think that is an amazing point to just round up this
Absolutely.
podcast.
Perfect summary there.
Very clear strategy of how to get going, because what you measure will actually get done. You put it in there as part of the performance management system, and everybody will start shifting their behaviors to catch up. Yeah,
exactly.
I think that's brilliant.
So Geoff, how do people get more of Geoff McDonald? They want to find out more about you, get you to come and work with their organizations.
Everybody will want that.
They're all going to want to know how do they get you?
Oh, that's so kind of you, John, to even ask that question. I don't know. Have a look on LinkedIn. You'll find me on LinkedIn, or my website, geoffmcdonald.co.uk.
Perfect.
Or my email address, geoffmcdonald90@gmail.com.
We'll put all that in the show notes so people can get them there. But I'm sure people are going to want to. Well, I'm hoping they're going to want to. They need to. So let's hope they'll get the message and make this thing a strategic priority now.
Yeah.
The impact is huge. The need is vast. People to take the right action.
If you think about it, going to work can be so good for us. It gives us a sense of purpose. It gives us routine. It gives us the opportunity to build relationships and feel part of a community. I mean, those are all good things. It should be good for us, shouldn't it?
Yeah. And people want to work. The assumption is that they don't. People want to know that they're making a meaningful contribution.
Exactly. Exactly.
But we create environments that make them unhealthy. How do we
diminish
change
their
that?
lives? We diminish their lives. We diminish their lives.
Yeah.
Let's turn that around and start enhancing lives. Geoff, this has been such a great conversation. Thank you so much. Thanks for taking the time. And we look forward to maybe having you back another time. Come and talk some more about how we can improve. Let's see what results have been what people have done with some of this information.
I think you're going to get busier, not just because of this podcast, hopefully because of the podcast, but because I think we're just starting to connect the dots, and the human-centered approach to life, to organizational culture, to performance has to be the next thing that we need to get right for everybody to thrive and for organizations to succeed in the future. So looking forward to continuing this conversation, but meanwhile, keep doing an amazing work.
Andrea, thank you so much. And to you, Jonathan, for having me today and for the work that you continue to do. So thank you.
Thank you. Wonderful.
Most welcome. So to our audience, we say bye-bye and see you next time.
Next one. All right, bye-bye.
We hope you enjoyed that episode. And if you did, and you want to hear more, the best thing to do is subscribe. Then you'll never miss an episode. There's a new one every Friday. You can stay connected with us on social media at The 4 Habits for updates, behind-the-scenes content, and to participate in discussions related to the show. We always love to hear from you. And of course, if you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a review on your preferred platform to allow us to reach more listeners and help people around the globe radically transform the way they do relationships so they too can enjoy better harmony at home, thrive at work, and win at life.